Apart from being impeached, the Speaker of the Delta State House of Assembly, Monday Igbuya, has been slammed with a 3-month suspension. Mr. Igbuya was impeached earlier today for alleged high-handedness and abuse of office. The Majority Leader, Tim Owofere, has also been suspended. The length of the suspension, however, has not been confirmed. While lawmakers elected Sheriff Owofere as the new Speaker, Honorable Johnson Ejuru is now the Majority Leader of the Delta State House of Assembly. The impeached Speaker is the 13th leader of the state legislature in the 6th Assembly under Governor Ifeanyi Okowa. Let's move on to some legal matters. Now, Justice Ahmad Mohammed of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has fixed June the 15th, 2017 to rule on the prosecution's application to protect their witnesses when giving evidence in the case against the former National Security Advisor, retired Colonel Sambo Dasuki. Mr. Dasuki is facing a 7th-count charge of unlawful possession of firearms and money laundering brought against him by the federal government. The prosecution applied to have their witnesses protected by giving evidence behind a screen in the interest of justice, a motion opposed by the Defense Counsel. Our correspondent Yemi Sikbaye reports.
The former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, enters the Federal High Court, Abuja, dressed in white. On the 6th of April 2017, Colonel Dasuki had been rearraigned before Justice Mohammed on a 7-count charge of unlawful possession of firearms and money laundering. Under a motion dated the 3rd of June 2016, the prosecution applies to have their witnesses protected by giving evidence from behind a screen, arguing on the grounds of natural justice that their identity should not be known to the public, as they are security operatives. The prosecution also highlights that in comparison to their previous application, where they applied for witnesses to be masked, in this instance they were applying for witnesses to be screened. Defense counsel Mr. Raji asked the court to refuse the application, arguing that the prosecution had filed a similar application on the same issue, which had been rejected, and therefore their current application was an abuse of process. Mr. Raji also argued that the current application predates the new charge, and that the ground that the witnesses were at risk of harm was purely speculative. Prosecution counsel responded that there was a clear distinction between screened and masked, and that a similar application dated the 24th of January 2017, referred to by the defense as pending, was in their view withdrawn. Justice Mohammed then adjourned proceedings to the 15th of June to give his ruling on the application. Prosecution counsel clarifies.
Screening is just to have, like you have in court most of the time, when they bring something like you find in the theater and just shut the person out. But the accused person and his lawyers can see, and they can cross-examine him, they can watch his demeanor, they can do all they want to do. So he's not taking away any of their rights. Whilst defense counsel comments.
You see, in law, if you have option of asking for 3 things, and you go to court and ask for 2, you are deemed to have waived the 1. You can't harass your opponent instrumentally. And besides, it's just splitting here is the same. Screening and masking. What is the purpose? To prevent the witness from being viewed.
Justice Mohammed's upcoming ruling will determine how evidence is given in this trial, and it will also shed light on the screen versus mask debate. Yemisi Ipaya, Channels Television News.
Staying with legal matters, the Court of Appeal sitting here in Lagos has overturned the 5-year conviction of a former Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, Temisa Omaseye, for alleged contract splitting. The appellate court discharged and acquitted Mr. Omaseye on all counts, thereby setting aside the judgment of Justice Rita Ofili Ajumogobia, which had found him culpable in a 1.5 billion naira contract scam. She ruled that he awarded contracts above the stipulated 2.5 million naira threshold in violation of certain provisions of the Public Procurement Act. But the appeal court held, among other things, that the trial court did not properly evaluate the evidence. The court, presided over by Justice Yagata Nimpar, resolved all 5 grounds of appeal in Mr. Omaseye's favor. In reaching its decision, the court considered 4 issues for determination, including whether under Section 16 of the Public Procurement Act 2007, approval for spending over the threshold constitutes any offence. Justice Nimper, who read the judgment, considered whether the trial court properly evaluated the evidence, and she said, "I found that it did not." And away from legal matters, a bullion van belonging to the Central Bank of Nigeria today rammed into the convoy of the Ogun State governor on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, damaging one of the vehicles. It was gathered that the governor's convoy, which was on its way to Lagos, was forced off the road as the ZBN bullion van attempted to overtake the convoy around Ibafo. In the process, the van, which was speeding, rammed into the governor's escort vehicle from behind before the CBN personnel, who were already travelling in the convoy, were forced to stop by the governor's security aides. The governor, however, was unhurt. The situation was said to have left the governor and the team travelling with him in disbelief and shock at the display of carelessness and disregard for other road users. All right, now let's cross over to Abuja. Here's Ibrahim Adra. Ibrahim.
Hello, Ijama. Good to see you. Now, Benue State Governor Samuel Otom advocates that ranching is the only way to bring lasting peace between farmers and herdsmen across the country. The governor, who was speaking at the 2017 National Security Summit organized by the Nigeria Police, said Nigeria needs to adopt the global best practice in this respect. He said failure to do this will mean that farmers and herdsmen will continue to clash. Our correspondent Amaka Okafo has that story.
Is in its second year. The event, which centered on strategies to curb the menace of kidnappings, recurrent farmers and herders clashes, not only attracted security operatives, but governors, lawyers, market men and women, and traditional rulers. For the traditional rulers, national security must be owned by every Nigerian if Nigeria is truly ready to deal with the challenges of insecurity.
National security must be placed above individual liberty. You cannot claim freedom of expression and insult everybody and cause problems. You cannot claim freedom of worship and go up to the restaurant either at the churches or the mosques and insult and cause problems across the country through religions.
We should invest in equity. We should invest more in the strength of our diversity.
But the governor of Benue State says the only way to tackle insecurity, especially as it relates to farmers-herders clashes, is to agree that there are not enough lands for grazing and go the way of ranching.
In South Africa, they ranch. In Kenya, they ranch. And so why can't we do the same thing in Nigeria? Government at the local government level, at the state level, and the federal level must come together. Because the issue of ranching cannot be done overnight, but that is the only solution that can bring peace on this matter.
But for the Inspector General of Police, manpower and welfare continue to be a huge challenge for the Nigerian police to carry out its constitutional duties.
The Nigerian Police Force currently needs to recruit additional 155,000 officers to police Nigerian population of approximately 182 million.
The event shifts to the foyer of the venue for a display of the capabilities of the Nigerian police. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
Elsewhere, the Northern Elders Forum has pledged its loyalty and support to Nigeria's acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, as well as the unity of Nigeria. The deputy leader of the forum, Elder Paul Nongo, made this known in Kano after a meeting with the forum in the Kano state capital. The forum, among other resolutions, also expressed concern about the politics in the northern states and its attendant consequences on the development of the region.
Like millions of other Nigerians, Northern Elders Forum prays for the recovery, the full health of Mr. President, President Muhammadu Buhari. We commend the steadfast respect for the Constitution in the manner the President assigns responsibility as provided for in the Constitution, to the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, whenever it has become necessary for him to travel to seek for medical treatment. We pray earnestly and urge Nigerians to also pray for the return of Mr. President in good health, so that he can continue to exercise the mandate given to him by the Nigerian people. And as we're praying for him, we also urge Nigerians, of course, to support Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who is the acting president.
The media and its practitioners in Nigeria have been challenged to protect the ethics of the profession in order to reposition the industry. A professor of political communications of the Olabiso Nabonjo University, Professor Ayo Lukotun, gave this charge while delivering a lecture on governance and the media in an emergent democracy. It was the maiden lecture of the Obasikiru Adetono Professorial Chair in Governance.
Here with us to try based on the corporate governance.
It's the maiden edition of the Professorial Chair in Governance, initiated by the traditional ruler of Ijebu land, the Awujale of Ijebu, Obasikiru Adetono.
Here with us to try based on the corporate governance.
Other traditional rulers are present here, including the Oba of Lagos, His Royal Majesty Rilwan Akiolu, senators, former governors and other dignitaries. They're here to share their knowledge on the topic, governance and media in an emerging democracy. The lecture focused on examining the strengths and weaknesses of the media in this context. The guest lecturer, Professor Ayo Lukotun, says the media is not well represented in the global structure, which needs balance and transparency.
The digital public sphere is alive and well in Nigeria, with the country connecting to global corridors via the social media, powered by mobile phones and citizen jobs. So far, outside of Nollywood, Nigeria is fully represented in global media structures, considering that it lacks contract flow power, which can project Nigerian narratives on the scale of Al Jazeera.
He goes on to emphasize the need for the media industry to be fair when reporting events, insisting proper attention should be given to perspectives that are regionally based.
Looking ahead, the media will have to maintain, even enlarge, the crusading and reformist outlooks with which they have been historically associated. To do this, they must increase efforts to rid their ranks of corruption, as well as ensure that employers of media pay their workers as and when needed.
The essence of this event is projecting professionalism in all spheres. Truth, fairness and accuracy are seen as ingredients to position the industry for greater heights.